Thanks a million everyone for coming here today on a Friday morning to talk about pensions and to talk about life changes when you hit retirement age. So my presentation will be around 15 minutes and it's all about planning for lifetime income in retirement. So I guess the biggest worry for a lot of people in retirement age is their money going to last forever? Or not forever, until they die. And it's a big worry. It was obviously a worry for Winston Churchill back in the day, and it's a big worry for a lot of clients that I have. You know, they're wondering, how long is my money going to last? Is it going to grow by enough? And I guess the biggest variable in all that is death. You know, when is someone going to die? And a lot of these variables you can't control. But hopefully from this presentation, I can give you a bit of insight into what actually works for a lot of clients that hit retirement age, so that they have a fulfilled life when it comes to their pension. So the essential retirement question is, will your income outlive you, or will you outlive your income? And that is really the key question. And this presentation is hopefully going to give you some insight to on how to make your money last for the next, hopefully, 30 years. So for your income to last, it actually has to stay in line with inflation. The cost of living has increased significantly over the last, I suppose, especially during COVID. You know, inflation was at 7%, but generally speaking, inflation is around 2% per annum. So what you don't want, a lot of people think of retirement, okay, I'm going to draw down 10 or 20 grand or 30 grand a year, and their income is going to stay stable. But in actual fact, it has to stay in line with the cost of living. Your income has to go up every year in line with inflation. So the life expectancy of someone in their 60s now is actually going to be brought up to 90. So if you're a couple, the likelihood of your wife should probably live up until the age of 92, which is a great thing. But the downside is we have to have enough money in retirement to pay for that lifestyle. So this just shows you the impact of inflation over time. So a lot of times I'm dealing with clients and they want, let's say, 40 grand a year. So that's 30 grand from the state pension, 30 grand from their private pension, and 14 grand from their state pension. But you can see how inflation impacts this over time. Your 3,000 a month would shoot up to 3,394. If you look at year 20, it goes up to 4,914. And then finally, year 30, you're up to 6,289, which is quite heavy. So how do you deal with this rising inflation? And what's the best way to counterbalance it? Darren's shaking his, or like nodding his head, just go to Standard Life. The key is to invest your money in global companies. So that's the key, to invest in the stock market. If you're investing in the stock market, your money should grow over time, and the key is dividends. Dividends. If you're investing in the stock market, companies will give you a dividend every year to try to counterbalance the inflation. So this is actually the Consumer Price Index of Ireland and how much inflation has impacted us over the last 20 years. Inflation has gone up by, or the cost of living has gone up by around 50%, which works out to be around 2.5%. Obviously in the early 2000s, inflation was quite low, and then COVID hit, and inflation was quite high. This is the Irish stock market. So if you put in 100 euros in the year 2000, it would be worth 189 euros now. Now the reason why I'm bringing up Ireland is it's important to focus outside of Ireland as well, in the worldwide stock market. So if you put in 100 euros into the S&P 500, which is the top 500 companies in the US, 100 euros would be worth 577 euros now. So one part of my presentation is to make sure that you're aware of the importance of diversification, not to have all your eggs in one basket, not to focus too much on Ireland, but investing in the world. So dividends are the inflation killer. So as we said, inflation was 50% for the last 20 years. But if you had invested in the S&P 500 over the last 20 years, just the dividends would have grown by close to 50%, 45%. And then with dividends reinvested, it's up 477%. So everyone's probably aware of the options at retirement. You get a tax-free cash amount, and then you've got to decide, okay, do I put it into an annuity, which is an annual income for the rest of your life, or do you put it into an ARF? My recommendation would generally be an ARF is more powerful because you're not giving your capital away to the insurance company, and you can make it grow over time. So this is an actual example. I had a client, she had 500,000 in a pension, and she wanted to know, could I get 40 grand a year, every year for the rest of my life, including inflation? So she got her tax-free cash of 25%, which is 125,000 euro, and then she had the balance of 375k for the rest of her life. Now it's important to manage that 375. What I often find is that people in their 60s and 70s don't take enough risk, don't take enough smart risk to get their capital to grow, to last for enough time, to last for 30 years. So I showed her option one. If your pension grew by 4% and she drew down 5%, it would start at 18,000 a year. But obviously with inflation, in year 25 it would be 34,000. The total payout is 675,000. If she took a bit more growth, you can see her first payment would be 22,000. And then her last payment would be 41,000. And ultimately, she went for option number 3. The first payout was 26,000. She got the state pension of 14, and that stayed in line with inflation. But if you look at the amount of money that she's generated, it's 945,000, and she paid in 375. So it's quite powerful, the power of investing. So how to invest? That's a question I get a lot. My recommendation is to invest in global companies and to try to keep it simple. Too many people say, oh, invest in Bank of Ireland, AIB. Scrap that. Invest in the worldwide stock market at low cost. Lowest cost possible. And you will generate returns over time. So Vanguard are one of the biggest fund managers in the world. Standard Life have exclusive access to Vanguard in Ireland. So Vanguard don't take the view, I'm going to pick a bit of Google, I'm going to pick a bit of Facebook, a bit of Microsoft. They buy the whole stock market. So there's 13,000 stocks in their funds. So this guy set up Vanguard in the 70s, and they're managing trillions. The cost of your fund is quite low because they've got so much scale behind them. So they've got low risk, medium risk, and high risk funds with Vanguard. So a lot of time, customers in their 60s are like, okay, I don't want to take too much risk. And I'm like, well, if you want your pension to grow, this happens a lot. I meet a customer in their 60s, they don't want to take any risk. But the downside of not taking any risk is their pension isn't going to last for 20 or 30 years. So they should take a bit of risk. So a lot of times people go for the 60-40 split. And it's been proven to give 7.5% a year on average since the 1900s. Now, I can't predict where the stock market will go, but over the last 100 years, the average return of the stock market has been 10%. So some of the performance of Vanguard funds, if you look at the 10-year performance at the highest risk one, it's generating 10%. And the lowest risk is 2.5%. So the critical piece for a lot of people coming to retirement is just making sure that your income lasts and that it stays in line with inflation. Zurich Life, we'll skip that because Standard Life are here. Okay, another thing is I wouldn't recommend investing in unregulated investments. These are all the investments that have collapsed in Ireland. So you look at Solar 21, it's renewable energy, it's unregulated, and people lost all their money. AIB did Belfry investments, a lot of people lost all their money. Custom House Capital, they were a broker, they took money in, and they said they were investing this way, they actually invested that way, and everyone lost their money. And then Blackbee, they were investing in a nursing home, everyone lost their money. So a big piece of today is, not only should people who be investing in the global stock market be really wary of investing in dodgy investments, and don't do it. It's not worth it. So how do I build better client outcomes? The first part of the process is financial planning. I get a handle of people's finances, how much do they need, and then I put a plan in place to figure out, okay, how are we going to get there, and we build a portfolio. A big part of it is the behavior coaching. So when COVID hit, pensions dropped by like 20 or 30%, and clients were ringing me up, let's move, let's move. The key thing with investing is to stick with it over a long period of time. And then by doing all those things, I build close client relationships. I operate with integrity and trust. I only have a small book of clients, and I try to provide a really professional service. Some of the qualifications I have, been doing this since 2008. 2008 wasn't an ideal time. so I met people and they're like, my pension's dropped by 50%, get out of my office. But it was a great learning. The key with investing is just to stick with it. Those clients that had lost their money in 2008, they've recovered their money. So a big part of the whole process is I use financial planning software to figure out, okay, how much is your budget, what do you need, and it gives you a picture of your lifestyle or life expenses for every year. It also includes tax and how much tax are you going to pay. If you want to buy a yacht, like Dermot might want to buy a yacht when he retires, you never know. So like, it gives you a good picture of your overall life into the future. Okay, so a big question a lot of clients have is how much money is enough? And that's what I can help people with. How much money do you need? Where does it need to go? And that should give you a good lifestyle at the end. Okay, so to begin refining your personal retirement income need, if you'd like a consultation, let me know. So that's it. Thank you.